Steve can make his own motion to adopt a budget that has $20,000 more in it than the budget because
But there's
remember, by
already a
accepting
motion
your
on-
amendment, I'm taking my motion down.
Okay, all right, I
So
understand. That's
I
fine.
don't accept that amendment to my motion.
Okay, well, then we have to vote on your motion.
No, we have to.
We have a motion on the floor. There's already a motion on the floor unless you want to
Right, but
table a
as we've
motion.
done before, we'd allow a competing motion.
Yeah, you have to
and
have a
then
competing
people
motion,
can
because
either
if we
vote
accept,
for his or vote for mine.
motion, then let's accept it. So you have to allow a competing motion,
That's
right?
right.
Or else
No, you
pass
don't
this
have to
budget.
allow a competing motion because the vote on your budget would already exclude that.
Unless anybody has anything else to add to the
I don't think,
budget.
unless Steve introduces
And I did
the
wanna
opposing
raise one
budget,
other
it's
issue.
done, right?
This is
If we
not
vote on it,
preliminary.
Right, it's
right,
done.
so then you have to put it in as an opposing budget, Steve.
Look,
But tonight's only the
let me
preliminary.
suggest- let me make a
And
suggestion,
we
Steve.
still have the
Yeah, sure.
ability between the preliminary and the final
Right.
for the board to evaluate and consider. Now, we need to do that, out loud and in front of anybody. Any changes that people propose between the
20
between tonight's preliminary and December 8th
I
final.
agree, because then you,
That's fine.
first of all, then you don't, a $20,000 change is not a significant change to this budget, so it can be added in the
Right.
final,
In December.
in the December reading, and then,
That's fine with me, I don't mind doing that.
Yes.
okay, so we'll.
Whereas if there were budget items tonight that a majority of the board thought were worth making to the budget tonight, we could amend this budget on the spot now, and it would still be our preliminary, still subject to change between the preliminary and the final.
Right.
Oh, that's
Okay,
fine,
so why don't we
I could do that
and then
December
we'll-
13th, it's fine.
Okay.
That's fine, I
right.
understand.
So I guess we want to call a roll?
Thank you for indulging me.
No.
Sure. Are we set?
Okay, I think we're set.
So this is passing the budget then, is what you're saying?
This is passing
it.
Yeah.
the budget,
Basically end the meeting.
yeah, the budget proposal for 2015. Budget, preliminary budget adoption of 2015.
Item number 3.
All right.
I did,
Please.
please call the roll. No, I have.
Are there any
I
others?
you have
do
something?
just one last question. I just want to
Okay, go
get
ahead.
my head, in the budget, you have down, Larry, 2017 for the fire budget was $2 million. Okay.
Again, that's not budgeted, that's just a
Well,
forecast.
that's
Forecast
actual
for
capital
Yes.
expenditures for that time. And,
Still have to, the township would still have to fund that, figure out how they're gonna fund it.
but you did say you did speak to the mechanics and the Bureau of Fire
Yes.
and opine about that?
I spoke specifically with Chief Millay, I believe it was last Wednesday, or last Thursday. He came with the report that I put in front of you. And I go to all the Bureau of Fire meetings, would say 90% of them. And my communications with the Bureau of Fire, the chiefs, over the last year or 2 years, is that we need to take a look at extending the life of the vehicles and coming up with a plan to start to address eliminating some vehicles. It's my belief that obviously the fire service don't have enough volunteers and don't get as many firefighters as they did in the past. And a lot of times we get 2 or 3 companies that have to respond. A lot of the vehicles don't get out on the street. And we really have to take a serious look at, do we need the amount of emergency vehicles in the community as we have right now? Obviously, this board, I don't have to go out and tell this board, the financial constraints you're looking at. You're investing millions of dollars to finally address the municipal buildings and the vehicle maintenance building. That's going to be another $30 million roughly. You have faced before you the infrastructure problems of the continued problems with the sanitary sewers and the storm sewers. That's not going to go away. We're looking at a minimum of $6.8 million to address some of the flooding issues that this board wants to take.
Is that this year, Larry? The 6.8 million that we borrowing off the bond this year?
It's nowhere.
Not in it, right?
No, we haven't discussed that, and I guess that'll come,
That will come after we have the meeting.
after the
Yeah, I
meeting.
mean,
and-
it could be, right?
Wednesday's
It could be, because the way the buildings are gonna be going, like we'll be paying for the building as it's being built, so some of the money could go towards sewer, some of the money would go toward the building, and then the next year when we borrow, some of the money goes towards the sewer, some of the money goes toward the building.
But remember, And the bond that we voted on, or not me, you guys voted on the other evening, that you'll see in there, although that because we added it to 12 million, it's really not 12, it was 10. 10. You know why. But a small portion of that has to do with storm and sewer. So yes, some of that could go towards flooding, but remember, a lot, if not majority of it has to do with, we have other infrastructure issues in the town that we know that we're gonna have to line pipes, so there's gonna need to be additional borrowing if this board decides that they're gonna move forward with some of those flooding.
And we'll decide that.
And I don't wanna make this meeting a flood meeting, but, I caution you that we need to move with caution on that.
Larry, having said that, those issues that you just raised, would be discussed in the December budget meeting, whether we're going to borrow additional money for the flooding?
No, that is,
No?
that would,
Separate.
no,
No.
And that's a capital expenditure,
No, that's a capital
not a
expense and
budgeted
not a-
expenditure.
yeah. That's not part of the operational budget. That's gonna be in,
That's capital.
right.
When will that be? Oh.
Anytime we
Comes
want.
along.
Anytime?
Yeah, it could
That's
be,
different.
yeah,
It won't be
probably
this
early next year is when we'll begin to discuss borrowing money for some of
January,
those.
February?
Yeah, well, I mean, in 2015, we're going to borrow another $10 million as part of the capital commitments we've been making and have made. And we need to wait until 15 to be able to do those, and we need to limit it to 10 to be able to take advantage of bank qualified financing, and that's why we've staggered these things, and that's how it's gonna work. So there's no secret. I mean, we're doing, the first 10 was
Right.
last week.
Right, right,
Gonna be 10 more in 15, and there's gonna be money in 16,
Right.
to finish the projects.
right.
And
no, no,
the
I'm
way
not
these
saying
are
there was,
described,
Commissioner,
Legally
believe me.
speaking, the way these things are described in our intent resolutions and the way the tax law governs us is that we've got great latitude in doing projects similar to the projects that are described in these financings and in the papers of these resolutions. So you don't have to say to the item and to the dollar what you're going to do. If you're going to do infrastructure and capital improvements and new buildings, and you borrow $10 million to do that, you can use those $10 million for capital improvements and infrastructure repairs and new buildings or fixing old buildings or anything consistent with basically the goals you've stated in these resolutions. You make them broad so that you have that leeway. And the IRS doesn't hold us, and neither does the state law hold us to some exact, detailed description, because plans change. Things are, emergencies come up, and sometimes you've got to do things different, and sometimes, the bottom line is that it's designed for it to work and for the government to be able to do what the government has said it was going to do, whether it does it to to the item, or whether it just does it, in the concepts that it's addressing.
Okay. Commissioner
I
DeMille?
have, oh, good, Jimmy, I have a couple more questions.
Yeah, I have two things there, Mario. Number one, the Penn Star. Penn, how long is our contract with Penn?
It's a year-to-year contract.
It's year to year. Okay. And the second one is, I'd like to make a motion, I don't know if I'll get a second or not, but on the, or give the gentleman from Oakmont who, Mr. D'Amelio and Mr. Heilman and Mr. Wexler and myself met with the other night, Mr. Easton made a nice presentation just to hear what he has to say. And I'd like to make a motion that we add the $1 million in for their aerial truck. Now, I don't know if I have a second for it, but that's my motion.
Okay, that, would it be, would we
The
have?
capital, that's a capital expenditure, though. That's not in the budget. It wouldn't be in the budget. We
Why-
could do that next year, but the bottom line is, I mean, it's, it's not in this budget. It wouldn't be in this budget that we're voting on.
Well, I guess I'm confused of why we met the other night then. What was
Just
the
to make
purpose
sure,
of
see what
that?
the commitment
I don't know why
was
you
from
met the
us.
other night.
Huh?
That's,
Yeah.
that's up to you. I
We
don't know
met
why
this,
you met the other
we
night.
met with them to see what the commitment was, if we were all committed to them getting the trucks
Right.
on the schedule, that the Bureau of Fire had. And we did talk to them, we told them, and I think Chief Millay told them as well, 2017 will be the year, not 2015.
I think members of the company met with members of the commissioners here just to alert folks as to the needs that they anticipate having. and a number of commissioners who've taken interests in the fire, the different fire things were involved in that meeting. But it wasn't to take anybody's temperature or
Yeah, it
test out
was-
theories as much as it was to inform, first informally, and then I imagine one day formally. Oakmont is going to come before us, and either a committee of us or all of us, and present what their needs are. If they are inconsistent with the recommendations of folks we've talked to, we're certainly going to hear that from them. And again, that's the kind of capital expenditure that this board considers, when they come up and when they're presented to us right now.
Right, was
But
this-
putting $1 million in the
It
budget
wasn't
right
a fire
now.
committee meeting, it was.
No, it was a, just,
No, and I didn't call it that.
I'm sorry?
It's more of a community.
yeah.
I think.
Sorry, was it public?
Yeah, it could have been, yeah.
Okay.
What,
I
what
was-
I think,
Didn't know the meeting happened.
I think what was interesting is that it's in our proposal. I mean, Larry has it. It's proposed for 2017. I think as a township manager and the director of finance, they've looked forward. There's also about $700,000 in improvements to the stadium that are in that budget, proposed capital improvements. So ongoing, he's always looking forward. I mean, we don't pass it on a budget this year for the proposed capital improvements. We're not going to budget the $725,000 proposed capital improvements for the stadium right now either. So it's a similar thing. I think the intent was to show them as members of our volunteer public that the township manager is looking forward. It's a matter of timing. It makes most sense for the township in our borrowing cycle and everything to push it to 2017 instead of 2015, based on the age of the trucks and his experts giving him maintenance updates on those vehicles, and he's making those sound decisions on the budget. And I think that was explained to everybody that did attend that meeting, and I think everybody seemed to be happy.
Right, and again, acting tonight, we're acting on the anticipated, on the expenses we expect to have in 2015, and then we have to pass the taxes, we have to redo the ordinances that establish our trash fee, our sewer rental, our millage, in order for us to meet that budget. That doesn't mean at any time during any year, people who have capital needs can come to this board and talk to this board at this time. We are not, it's important that people understand the votes we are taking and the votes we are not taking tonight. We are taking a vote tonight to say that we anticipate $39.5 million of expenses this year, and we're going to match those expenses with $39.5 million of revenues, and how we're going to raise these revenues are in the following ways, and each department has told us what they need. But if the police department needs a $25,000 piece of equipment next April, whether it's on the budget or not on the budget, we have to hear about it, and we're gonna, we have to okay it, and that's how, all of these things work. And if members of fire companies have needs in 2015 that they want to address with us, they can raise it with us, and we are not, by not adding that to the budget today, saying that people can't come to us for a year. It doesn't mean we're going to say yes, but it's not the actions we're undertaking tonight to rule things out or add things in. We're adopting a budget, hopefully a budget that's close to final, if not final, of how we want to operate next year and how we want to fund it.
Okay.
Larry, a couple more questions. The Lanark business area that, the Lowe's and the Giant and whatnot, what are we getting from them, rateable wise? Any ratables? I mean, what is the rate? I'm sure we're getting, but what is it?
Okay.
200 in real estate, Amy is updating me, and about 160 in business tax.
So it's about $360,000. Do you anticipate that going up, Amy?
After they have a full year under their belt, we'll be able to really gauge if they're going to sustain that 160 or if it's going to go up or down. I wouldn't expect it to go down.
No.
Yeah. We're adding
Right.
Yeah.
2 new stores going
sorry.
in now. The vitamin store just opened.
Yeah.
And the Xfinity Center is going in
But
there as well.
but
so.
I don't want to drag this out. Please keep in mind, those tax appeals are coming in quicker than we can address them. Not only affects the township, but it also affects our school district. Okay, so people are appealing the real estate taxes. There are also, again, the businesses, there are closure of businesses, and the one particular business in the Ninth Ward will have an $80,000. So even though we're seeing some things up, we're also losing on others. So it's,
Now,
we need to.
yeah, one advantage to that pie chart you put up before that shows the big school district eating the little township and the littler county
You said that.
is that the school district has much more at stake in those tax appeals. So, I mean, the good news is that we typically get to just ride along on those tax appeals, since we basically have about 1/6 of what they have, or maybe 1/5 of what they have at issue in those appeals. So the good news is folks with a lot more at stake are putting a lot more energy into fighting those appeals, and we really get the benefit of that work. Oh, sure, yeah, I mean, and that's not, I mean, that's not special to our township. I mean, every school district across the Commonwealth is always the principal combatant in a tax appeal issue, because they have the greatest impact. They suffer the greatest impact.
All right, we should.
Just, Larry, just to avoid a misconception in Ninth Ward, it's not like we're going bankrupt over there. The Honda dealership has moved, but there is a new development coming in
Right.
with a CVS that will bring its associated real estate taxes, mercantile and sales taxes back to the township about a year from now when it's built. So it's,
That's new
we're going through a
construction, too,
cycle,
and-
not
yeah.
losing everything.
Okay, can we just call a roll?
Point.
We have,
Just have one more
we have
question.
to,
He has another question.
okay.
I mean, it's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, I understand. I understand. No, there's not a game on.
Bond council, what has that been up to this point?
What? Bond counsel?
Bond councils is payments that we pay to,
A lawyer, advisor, lawyer.
No, I get that. What's the,
Bond debt service?
what is is that included in the bond, his fees?
Issuance
It's in the bond. You know what that is?
Right here, okay.
$15,000.
15?
There's a number in here too,
Yeah, and we had put
for
it
the
out
issuance cost.
It was put out for bid.
bid, and it was
by
very,
far,
it was
yeah,
very
the
reasonable
lowest.
for someone with that experience.
We got Bill Richter's time to do this
I was
work.
just-
and
I was just
the
curious.
price they paid.
they write the ordinance, they do the press release, all those kind of stuff.
And they're in charge of the debt financing statement that has to go to, under the Local Government Unit Debt Act. I mean, so it's a significant amount of work, and I mean, fortunately, the competitive world now in the bond, in municipal finance has made people like Bill Rector available to us at a really extraordinary price.
Okay,
One more.
okay, one more
When we
question.
talked about the fire trucks or the truck for Oakmont, was there an insurance issue with that, or isn't? I mean, educate me on that. What was it, Bill? Did they mention an insurance issue?
There's always insurance issues. If you're looking at, it actually, Larry can probably address it, it's our ISO rating for the insurance carriers, based upon the size of your municipality, the number of apparatus that you have, a lot of factors that the insurance companies look at. It doesn't affect our taxes, it affects your homeowner's insurance and other type of things. But I think we're safely ensconced with a high rating right now, and that's not going to change for the foreseeable future, because our apparatus isn't going down, and it's not.
It's a confusing topic. If we were to reduce and eliminate a vehicle completely, that potentially could affect the ISO rating. ISO rating, if you actually have too much equipment
Goes down as well.
and not enough personnel to get that equipment out, that also has a negative effect of the bond ISO rating. So no, by extending the years of this truck,
It doesn't affect the
does
ISO?
not affect. That's absolutely not.
All right.
Okay, any other questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio,
No.
Mrs. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes,
Mr. Holmes,
Yes.
Mr. McGarity,
No.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Mr. Wexler,
Yes.
Mr. Heilman,
Yes.
and Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. President,
Commissioner Watts.
I move that we adopt the first reading of ordinance P23-2014, fixing the annual sewer rental or charge for each property connected to the sewer at $4.70 per 1,000 gallons of water consumed or used by said property.
How does that, I'm sorry, could I get a second?
Need a second.
Okay.
Mr. President, that does reflect a 20-cent change in the annual sewer rental. That is a change, we believe, long coming. It has been fixed at $4.50 for approximately, since 2009. We have spent significant money in upgrading and fixing the sanitary lines in our township, and it is necessary for us to raise this rate.
Okay. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
No.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
No.
Mr. Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Heilman?
Yes.
And Mr. Oliva?
Yes. Number 6,
Mr. President,
Commissioner Holmes.
I move we adopt the first reading of ordinance number P24-2014, fixing the Township of Haverford trash fee at $194 per year.
Second.
Mr. President, this reflects no change from last year's trash fee, and I recommend that we adopt it.
All right. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
No.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Heilman?
Yes.
And Mr. Oliva?
Yes. All right.
Mr. President, before we adjourn, could I just do two things? Could I thank our township staff, Mr. Gentili, Ms. Cuthbertson, and everybody else involved in this extraordinary effort? I think this is a fine budget and presented to us in plenty of time. A lot of analysis went into this. It's really professionally prepared, professionally done, and I think the lack of controversy surrounding it is just demonstrates the leadership that that Mr. Gentili and his staff have exercised, and I think the faith that the township have in him. So I just want to get a round of applause for
Good job, Larry.
I just want to take 30 seconds just to note that Moody's, when they assigned the AA2 rating to Haverford's $10 million bond issue last week, they said some very good things to the financial world about Haverford Township, addressing our stable financial profile, our healthy suburban tax base with above-average socioeconomic profile. They consider our debt position to be moderate, and they expect our debt position to stay moderate, even if we do all the anticipated debt that we expect doing over the next few years, which includes dealing with stormwater runoff, includes dealing with our new municipal buildings, as well as whatever work we do in the library. And it is considered just a very, very positive report. And I would thank, he's not here, but I thank Mr. Walker, who undertook several years ago to start the process of getting us our AA2 rating back. And enabling us to borrow without the additional cost of bond insurance. So bravo to him, and once again, our staff, and that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And before we leave, if there's any other apparatus meeting that's going to be public, please let me know. All right, if it's a public meeting.
What? It wasn't a public meeting.
That's fine, I thought that it was a public meeting.
No.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Can't have 5 there, though.
I know. No, but I thought it was public. If it's a public meeting, then you could go. All right. Commissioner Holmes?
I move we adjourn.
Well, entertain a motion.